The Villages, 1370 AM, 96.3 FM, The Source.
Thank you for tuning in. Remember the Oklahoma City bombing? Was it the Murrow building? That's what they call it? Remember that? The whole front of the building was just gone, remember?
Yeah.
Some guy, I don't even remember the guy's name who did it. And I always like when I forget the names of people who are infamous.
Yeah.
Anyway, I remember when that happened. It feels like a long time ago, but I remember when it happened. The big question is, why? Who? What's going on? Why would something like that happen? That was before September 11th, 2001. The next guest is not going to talk about that explosion, but part of the opening of the book reminds me of that. The book is called Red Hotel. It's a thriller novel. Our guest is the author, one of two authors of this book. He is Ed Fuller. The other author is Gary Grossman, and Ed is on the phone right now. Ed served as a captain. Ooh.
Sorry, my fault.
He served as a captain in the U.S. Army. He was awarded the Bronze Star and the Army Commendation Medal. He's the director of the FBI National Academy Associates Foundation, a consultant on security issues around the world, the president of Laguna Strategic Advisors, and it is because of all those credentials that we have a novelist on the phone for a half hour. Well, usually, a novel, you don't want to speak too much about the storyline because otherwise it gives away the story. But in this case, Red Hotel is the book, and we want to also tap into Ed's expertise, especially when it comes to things like, exploding cars in front of buildings, right, and taking off the whole front of the building. Ed Fuller, it's an honor to have you on our show. Good morning, sir.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Laguna Hills, California. But you might find it interesting that my first 10 years of my life, which I don't remember that clearly, were spent in Gainesville, Florida.
Is that right? Oh, my gosh. Wow. And have you been back since?
I have been back, maybe 20 years ago, but the family moved and kind of lost contact with Gainesville itself, but obviously followed the Gators.
Yeah, I bet you did. And the area has changed a lot. So we're good to have you on the phone. So, your work as in law enforcement and in the service seems to have intrigued us to the point that we want to tap into that a little bit if we can.
I'm here to assist in any way possible.
But first, let's talk about the story. Red Hotel. Tell me about the story.
Well, I spent 40 years of my life working for Marriott Hotels, and during 22 of those years, I spent overseas. And during that time, we were involved, had to develop crisis strategies, and had to deal with many, many challenges in the 73 countries we served in, as well as protecting our hotels, our guests, and above all, our associates.
Now, in Red Hotel starts out in Tokyo. Did you guys have hotels in Tokyo?
We had hotels in Tokyo, but this hotel, of course, is fictional. However, the experience behind it is drawn from a bombing we dealt with in Jakarta.
And did the whole front of the building get blown off, as we witnessed with the Arthur Murrow, Robin? The Arthur Murrow building in Oklahoma City?
No, it was not. In fact, the situation in Indonesia was really what caused us to change some of our strategy, because up to that point, everything we were looking for was coming in a truck or an individual bomber coming toward a building, much like Oklahoma City. In Jakarta, we actually had a florist in the hotel over a 7-year period established such a strong relationship with the community of the hotel, though not an employee, that he was able to assemble the bombs in the florist shop inside the hotel. And ultimately the bombers came into the hotel as guests, picked up their equipment, and went to the Ritz-Carlton in one wing and went to the JW Marriott in the other and let off bombs.
Wow. So you use that real life event to kind of give you some I don't know what word to use here, but some authenticity, perhaps, to the fictional event in the book?
Absolutely. And throughout the book, what we did is took stories that I dealt with in my work-related life and also some of the procedures we came up with. But the book is fictional, and the characters certainly are.
Dan Reilly.
We also, by creating a fictional book, we have a fictional bad guy who is the puppet master that totally controls everything going on. So a lot of adventure that is a combination of some real situations and a novel that hopefully people will enjoy.
Now, your work, combined with what your co-author Gary Grossman has done, it looks like he's worked in TV a lot, especially TV news. I'm guessing the two experiences you both bring to the book show us both sides of a story like this. You're working kind of like the FBI, and they're working. Am I guessing right that the parts of the book that each contribute reflects what you've actually done in real life?
Absolutely. And Gary has written 5 thrillers as an author, plus being a producer of many documentaries, and my involvement in being globally involved with Marriott running the international division for those 22 years gave me tremendous exposure to a number of different countries and a number of different environments.
Are we, as normal everyday citizens, are we safer, ironically, because of some of these bad guys? Are the people who do the work that you've done able to better second guess what a bad guy might try to do, so that I can go to the Thanksgiving parade in New York City and not have to worry about being mowed down? And I did that with Robin about 1.5 years ago, I guess. And it looked like it would be impossible for a bad guy to get very far.
I think that, regretfully, incidents cause people to react and sometimes overreact to prepare and make places safer. Sadly, you have to have incidents like 9/11 and others that create that environment. And quite frankly, I think we're much safer today in the United States than ever before.
The State Department issues travel warnings to people when they are going on trips to different countries. Should we be aware of where the American Embassy is in all locations?
It's always important when you go to another country to know where the embassy is, to have a phone number with you. No matter if you're going to London or Paris, it is always very sensible, especially if you're going to a country you're not familiar with, to study the State Department releases, because that information is tremendously helpful and also should guide your decisions for your travel.
So my notes indicate that Dan Reilly is the protagonist. He's a former Army intelligence officer, and the work he's doing to track down whoever was responsible for the explosion at the Kensington Hotel actually leads to events that threaten NATO. So that sounds like there's a political element to this story as well.
Oh, absolutely. And of course, we have a fictional character running a country that is just gone through tremendous trauma, in that he watched the wall go down, and this fictional character is now head of a government, which is Russia. And in the story, he is creating incidents to try to distract and keep people focused on other things other than his desire to regain territory. I don't know who that character might be. You might think of that individual running Russia today.
Should a person carry their passport on their person at all times, or should they leave it in the safe in their room or in their hotel?
That's a good question. Frankly, it depends on the country. If you're in a place like London, I keep the passport in the safe. If I'm in most other countries that are not quite like the UK or Australia, I generally carry the passport with me.
And how about, how do you react to strangers walking up to you asking for directions, simple things like that?
Well, for the most part, again, it depends where you are, but if you're in downtown New York, I'm a little cautious of people that are just walking up to me, and I always look to see who I'm talking to, and I will even be cautious in any city. When somebody approaches you, you should understand that you always have a degree of discomfort unless you're in your own hometown and backyard.
Does your experience give you a different view of some of the things that we all believe are true, like the conclusion of what happened in Oklahoma City or even what happened on 9/11?
Well, it's clear that you've got many objectives that people take on, be they the personal attack of a mosque or be it an attack of a federal building. These people all have their own agendas, and you always have to worry about that. And the good news is our government works a lot of days and nights worrying about making sure we're safe. And that is something that you cannot take for granted when you go to another country that doesn't have all those systems working for you. So it's important to note that all of those things can happen anywhere in the world, and we see that every day.
Your publicist told us that the character Brenda in the book has the same name as your assistant. Is that was that planned?
Well, Brenda, by the way, never brought me coffee, which is the book, which proves it's a novel. But Brenda, who lives in Punta Gorda, has worked with me for 42 years. So, yes, I had to do more than give her a shout-out in the book because she played a key role in making things come together when I was traveling around the world. And she certainly did everything in the book except bring that coffee.
Oh, my God. Again, the book is called Red Hotel. This is a big book, by the way. I don't know how many pages. Just picture a large book. What dictionaries used to look like, remember?
Mm-hmm.
When we used dictionaries?
I do.
So do you, like when we hear about a shooting at a mosque like happened in New Zealand, that horrible story, or anytime there's it seems like a lone gunman and the target seems to be religious or political, is there any evidence that might be a way for the tail to wag the dog? Are we being manipulated by groups? I'm not saying by governments, but maybe it is governments. But do you think that's happening?
Oh, I obviously think that when somebody does that, whether it's a personal unstable situation or whether it's a cause trying to get visibility, the fact that media plays such a big role today and brings stories to a broad audience, I think they are all playing for that attention and in some way, in their own strange way, realize, and that was evidenced in New Zealand because the video was taken during the acts, that they are trying to get some degree of recognition, whether it is a very sick individual or a cause such as we've seen all the way to 9/11.
Yeah, I mean, we have a history of single shots that triggered entire world wars, and the shot heard around the world is the perfect example. Does your character in the book try to do that? Is that part of the reason for doing what he did?
Well, the character in the book is actually trying to protect their hotel. And in reality, Dan is doing what we would want him to do, and the hotel company is doing what we want them to do, which is make sure that a hotel facility, no matter where you are in the world, is a safe place to be. In reality, though, he gets caught up in this complete global situation that cannot be anticipated in any way, shape, or form, and is drawn into the intrigue and the like. Now, where there's some parallels to real life, I can assure you, as the president of the International, I was not running through Brussels with a gun in my hand chasing the bad guys. Yeah. That's why it's fiction and it's fun.
Okay, all right.
You mentioned the book size. This is the first of 3 books. And the first book, we spend a little time trying to build the characters. The second book, which we hope to have out by the end of the year, really picks up where the first starts and really starts to have action moment 1.
Each city in every state has their own touristy areas. Are there sometimes intelligence reports that are given to hotels that they're giving them a heads up that something could possibly happen? And then how do you handle that with your guest bookings?
Well, when you have an alert, you have a responsibility to tell your guests whatever is the risk. And clearly the training that companies do with their staff, excuse me, and with their associates, being able to communicate to the guest is essential. And there have been many examples of that. I draw Soviet Georgia, the former territory of Russia. We had the Russians coming into Tbilisi, and we had guests in our hotel there that we had to protect. It's a little hard to protect against Russian tanks coming toward the hotel, but we took many, many steps both to evacuate our guests and protect the people that remained with the hotel. Luckily, the tanks turned around and did not come into the city, but that is always a constant choice you have to make about taking care of your guests while they still have the own decision as to how they're going to deal with the crisis too. You cannot make guests do what you want. You want to protect them and give them the best options.
Right now, it looks like the United States and Russia are playing tug of war with Venezuela. Do you see that as is that going to develop into the next Vietnam War?
I don't see it going that far, but you got to admit that this situation in our world today keeps giving us fodder for more books.
Does it ever go the opposite way? Do you ever get calls from the Pentagon asking for some ideas as a novelist that maybe they wouldn't have thought of?
It's interesting you bring that up. I have not. I have sat through a briefing at Fort McNair where we had played games with the military to talk about the new world where there is no clear good guy, bad guy situation on a border. I.e., today we have hotels in Russia. We have hotels in Cuba. What is the responsibility for the military to protect our guests when they are in another country that may be at odds with our own country? Mm-hmm. And the answer is that we have to take care of our own guests in those countries. And in fact, we went through a deep discussion because early in my international involvement, our hotel in Panama had been attacked by Noriega, looking for Americans and reporters in the Panama Hotel, Marriott Hotel. They machine gunned every door in the hotel and went into every room. They could not find the guests because we hid the guests in the laundry machines in the basement.
Oh, wow.
And they literally were in the tumblers and in the dryers. So they never found them. But that role of the Panamanian Marriott employees saved those people's lives.
Wow. Holy mackerel.
And so you have a situation where America was attacking Panama, but at the same time, our guests needed us to help look after them. And that's a responsibility we take very seriously.
As a reader of your book is super, super interesting. I'm very appreciative that you have the different timelines in there along with the locations. It really solidifies in my head where and what's going on.
Well, it's trying to run a parallel story, which is real life, as stories are happening and incidents are unfolding, and you are following it through two really different lenses, and that's what I think makes it more exciting.
It does, very much so.
Has the technology of the world changed the tools or the weapons that we have to be careful of? I'll bring one up just because I don't know much about it, but we've heard about like some kind of a sonic thing that was getting American diplomats sick in Cuba. What do you know? Any idea what that might have been?
You know, that's interesting because it also happened in China, in Beijing, next to our American embassy.
And they could target their victims?
They apparently could. Now,
Wow.
I'm reading the same information you are, although I don't have the resources I had when I was working for Marriott. I have other resources that I tend to read that makes assumptions that was truly a test and that could be a weapon that could be used and targeted toward different people at different times in a conflict or even in a situation like they did in Cuba.
Yeah, we even had a report of a defensive weapon that put out some kind of a sonic wave or something like that. That people would just
To block it.
Yeah, they'd be repelled by it, and they wouldn't even come near it.
Well, see, that's what's so great about our government. When you have a problem, you try to fix the problem. And you brought up technology. We started writing this book about 1.5 years ago. Think of everything that has evolved technology-wise in 1.5 years.
Yeah, so much. I know it's so quick that you can't keep up with it, I think, as an author, unless you can really see into the future, perhaps, and write some of that stuff. Ed, thank you for being on the air with us. I want to give away the book that you sent us. It's huge. If you would like the book, it's available.
Wonderful.
It's available on Amazon, and we'll get Ed to give us some other website information. But he did send us one. So if you like the one that he sent us, call 622-9622. I will pick one caller at random on the air, and then the rest of you will have to go buy it, including myself. I will probably be buying this one as well. Is it available as a ebook? I think it is, right?
It's available as Kindle. It's available Audible through Amazon also. And it is obviously available through Barnes & Noble independent booksellers as well as Amazon itself.
Okay.
And when you were involved in the corporate expansions in different countries, how hard was it for you to convince the local government there that this would be good for their economy?
Oh, that was obviously easier than you may think in most of the emerging countries. But you run into all sorts of issues when you get into building resorts, ensuring sustainability, and being focused on some of the more fragile environments. But in the long run, you can make resorts sensitive to sustainability when you grow this industry.
Gosh.
Let me see who I have on the phone. Good morning. You've got the book. Who's this?
Hey, great. It's Crazy Ken, your favorite listener.
You got it. It'll be waiting for you.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
All right. Thank you. Ed, thank you for being on the show with us. Real fascinating life you've lived, and using that experience to contribute to a novel just makes the novel more authentic, more believable, and more exciting. Who would have thought tumblers? Who would have thought a florist? I mean, some of those things I don't know that you would have thought of on your own. Ed, thank you so much.
Pleasure. Thank you.
All right, we'll be right back.
Broadcasting from the Paddock Mall Studios, this is WOCA, Ocala.
Fox News, I'm Chris Foster. President Trump says it's a shame the country and he had to go through this. Special counsel Robert Mueller's report finds no one in the Trump campaign conspired or coordinated with the Russian government in its efforts to influence the 2016 election.
There was no collusion with Russia. There was no obstruction, and none whatsoever.
The Mueller report does not conclude either way whether the president committed criminal obstruction of justice, but Attorney General William Barr's summary finds there's not enough evidence to say he did. That's all we have is Barr's summary, and Democrats like New York Congressman